like a paper toy. Oh, no, no, no. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, no, no, no. When they smile at you, darling, and wink, it's a lethal force that'll bring you down. Trying to get you tipsy like a drink. Love drunk girls all over town.
Hi, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Rumbi.
Welcome to
Itslayered. We're in a long-distance friendship that started 20 years ago when we were in high school.
We'll be talking all things life, love, family, anything and everything under the sun.
Delve deeper with us because in life, you know, Gine layers. Yeah.
Layers.
How are you, Am, since we last spoke?
I'm good, love. How are you?
As I sip my elderberry, I think it's elderberry. Elderberry.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, I've been eating the tea. Spring has a super run, sort of.
Oh.
Temps are hitting plus 10 degrees, so I'm here for it. Here for
Isn't that so funny? Because
that's
it's
winter
like
back
the
home.
opposite.
I know.
Yeah. 10 is like, take out my juicy. Wear your jerseys. Remember how in high school, sometimes you would wake up and there'll be like frost on the grass. And then you'd be like, please, can the head girl ask for us to wear tracksuits? Please, we need to be wearing layers. We were experts in layers.
Literally. Even now,
cold.
It's cold and no heating. Like obviously, like you'd be lucky if your teacher had a heater in the class.
Yeah.
But I don't
hot water bottle at night.
Yep. Yeah, I don't
Things were basic.
Mm-hmm. I know it was very basic, but we digress.
I know. I was just thinking more on what we touched on for the after show of Private Affairs. Shout out to Private Affairs. Yeah. We're still so stoked that we got to do that and kick some amazing first season of Private Affairs. So shout out to all those guys.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
But as we were like delving deeper in that after show, I was just really thinking, wow, classism or privilege is such a huge thing, don't you think?
100%. Like such, it was a theme that came through, obviously on the podcast. It's so deep-seated, and we'll go into that, especially when we talk about it in the Zim context. But maybe you can tell, like, what is elitism? Like for someone listening, or classism rather. Let's start with that. What is classism?
Okay. For me, classism is just like a way of life where people are like, everything you do in life is judged by which class, quote unquote, you come from. You know, I think in like India, they do like the caste system. I think a lot of different nationalities and cultures do it differently. But essentially it's just I'm better than you or you're worse off than, because of situations most of the time that you can't even control, you were born into.
Yes, absolutely. 100% agree. And it doesn't make sense sometimes. You're like, but how is this, like, anyway? But I think too, then defining elitism, I think elitism is kind of saying that maybe not necessarily born into it, but once you hit a certain level of whatever you earn or some sort of professional name or standard, it's like you segregate everybody from who you are. So I think they go hand in hand in some way.
Definitely.
But elitism is kind of like really making it known that I am here and you are there, or I am here. Yeah. It's definitely a power play. So it comes from a point of privilege and saying like, you can't touch me. This is where we fall, and making it anyone who doesn't fall within that bracket feel that difference. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I completely get it. It's like classism, elitism is like its ugly cousin or something.
Yes, like where the
like
goes
because I think because I feel like class could be like you were born in, you know, like the monarchy and things like that, earls and dukes and blah blah blah. But like even if you're poor or at least less wealthy than the rest, you can kind of hide. But then elitism is all about materialism. So it's like you'll be like exposed.
Yes, exactly.
Driving the latest car, the blah blah blah. Yeah, it's just and in a Zim context,
it's next level. Next level. Like
wow.
I think you can't even talk about Zimbabwean life without touching classism and elitism. Like they are so intertwined. It's actually scary. And often too, when you get out of the Zim context, that's when you really realize, like, whoa, that's a lot of like, it's really intense.
How do it's embedded.
How do you see it play in Zim, like for you?
In Zim, I feel like whether or not you want to participate, it is you're going to. Because like I feel like even from the schools we go to, even like there's literally it's from birth. So it's like there's no other way to be. Like I actually think people in Zim don't even think too hard about it. They just accept that's
it
the
is
way
what
it
is.
Yeah, it is what it is. So I feel like us even discussing, a lot of people would just be like, okay, like,
it's normal, right?
Or isn't this how it always works elsewhere? But I feel like in Zim, in like an extra flavor, like there's another layer to it. Where you're like,
case in point, even like where you live, right? And then they like if you live in Harare, there's Samora Machel is used to demarcate like who, like to define you are this kind and I am this kind of person. And really separate in a way, like that is how embedded it is. Or, you know, I think when we were in high school, especially, there was the thing of like musalad, or which was, I think, an acronym for stupid Africans who like American dressing. So if you
wow.
Way,
I didn't even know that.
You didn't? Yeah, that's how I thought it was defined. Let us know if I've defined it correctly or not. In the comments, but honestly, like it was like how you dress, how you talk. So there's also like, oh, which school you go to, or so many layers.
So many. I mean, the school thing, even now, being in Australia, if I meet a Zimbabwean, it's one of the first 3 or 4 questions they ask. Like, oh, what do you do? You're also from Zim. Which school did you go to? It's like, girl, I'm literally 34 this year, and you can't keep asking me about a place I left 20 years ago. Like, you know, I started there 20 years ago. It's like crazy because it's like, then the conversation is defined from that moment. Whether or not I fucks with you or I don't, it depends on your answer. And it's so silly to me. When did you realize that classism was a thing in Zim? When did you first know?
I think for me in high school, it became kind of prevalent, you know, we used to like tease each other. If someone didn't pronounce a word properly, we'd say chop. Like to break English, essentially, like not saying things correctly. So there was that. There was obviously, it's like you can't be seen in certain places, or like
certain people.
Yes, but I think it was made evident, but I wasn't aware of like this is problematic at that stage. I just knew there was something there where it's like you are put in different pots. Like obviously, I think growing up, you know, I grew up I didn't live in Zim throughout my childhood. So we lived in South Africa, we lived in Ghana, West Africa, and then came back towards the end of my primary school education. But I think it just really became more obvious for me when I was in high school. Yeah, I think.
Interesting. Yeah. For me, I think it was definitely earlier than high school. But I don't blame that on, like, I just don't blame it on anything. I think it's just a family thing. I think my dad fought really, really hard to push himself out of the class that he was defined by birth. You know, so then now I was the next generation, right? So I was quote unquote enjoying the benefits of that. So I found, like, when I'd go to my cousins' houses, you know, or hang out with family, a lot of times I was like, oh, okay, we have a bigger TV. Oh, we live in a nicer house. Or a lot of times they would want to come to our place for holidays. Meanwhile, I'm like, you know, like, so I think I caught on pretty quickly. And my mom would always say, like, my mom was big with being social and visiting people. She would always say, you know, what some of the things we have at home, they don't have here. Like, don't you go around asking for this. You get what you're given. You get what you're given.
Amanda, but would that be classism or just like understanding, like, you have more than, do you get what I mean? Because I think everywhere someone will notice I have more than someone else. Like, that's, I think it's just how the world works. But I feel like classism is that level of like, oh, you're different. Do you get what I mean?
No, I think it was like that for me. Because in my family, in Zim, they have what they call Group A schools. So that's private schools.
Yes.
And then the government schools. In my family, in my generational line, apart from my siblings, I was the only one going to a Group A school. So automatically, I knew, you know, when people are talking about going to Kwenda mission, with that mission, and I'm like, oh, Peter House.
They're like, yeah.
You know. So yeah, of course, maybe when I was younger, I might have equated it to things. But I mean, when you're that young, you don't really think too deeply about why they go to a government school with no white people. And your friend at school, one of your best friends at school is white, and it's not an issue. So it was almost like always knowing. I started being a chameleon from that age, I think, because you couldn't come with all your, you know, people would be
your
like,
private school stats. They'll be like, who you think you
So I think I caught on early on, but I think that's just purely because, you can change classes. So
true. I get you. Well, if you put it like that, I think too, I noticed it, you know, with certain family too, because of language as well.
Of course.
And, you know, I am Ndebele, but Ndebele in that my dad is Ndebele, but my mom is Shauna. And so with Ndebele family, you know, I didn't grow up knowing Ndebele. So that was made evident too, almost like, oh, so you think you're better than us, but it was just a product of, hey, we didn't really live in Zim for those formative years and around Ndebele speaking family. So do you get what I mean? So then I get what you mean. Sure. So it's also in those nuances of it all, right? Like you see it come and play through.
Like I think you're completely right. Classism goes a step above have and have nots.
Yes.
But yeah, when you know all the people around you are like, because where you live, all those things plays into it. Yes. So when you know you're going to the locations to visit your cousins and you find it exciting, and that's when you realize, okay, why? Our lives are clearly different.
Yes.
Why is it exciting to travel to that place and then go down to the tuck shop? And
yes.
Exciting for me. Whereas for them, they were like normal life to go and buy a few little groceries, not do a big trolley shop like I did. So it's like you start to see it.
For sure. For sure.
Do you think saying all of that makes us sound like we're speaking from a place of privilege? Because it sounds like we're being like
I think you have to acknowledge your privilege, right? Like, obviously we understand we were privileged in how we grew up. And I think I've said this to you before. It's like when we talk about racial injustice and how people don't want to talk about it, it's because, like, especially white people, it's because they come from a place of privilege, right? So it's like acknowledging that this system served me in some way, shape, or form.
And exists to begin with.
Exactly. So we acknowledge it exists. We acknowledge that we benefited from that privilege. However, I don't necessarily think it's saying that, oh, it's the way to go. Do you get what I mean? It's just saying this is what
better than.
Yes, this is what it is, you know. And for me, it's a personal pet peeve, like people thinking they're better than someone else just because. It's one of the things that really frustrates me. But so I'd say that.
Yeah.
I think so.
I think it's also sad because it's used to classify you before you even open your mouth. Similar to how it ties hand in hand with race sometimes. People can think a certain idea because of the color of your skin.
Yes.
Something you can't change. Your class, for most part, is something you can't change.
Or you don't choose, as we said at the beginning.
Or you don't choose. So when you grow up in it and you start to realize, oh, okay, I don't have this, I don't have that, they have that, you know. It can be hard because you're like, I can't actually change this.
Yeah. It is very hard. And
how tied do you? Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, well, how related or ingrained or tied to our way of life is classism in Zim? I think to give people a context, because I think as I said, stepping out of Zim, you're like, okay, it's like in everything or in a lot of things. Maybe you can break it down for someone who's like, what you talking about? Like, can you explain how it works?
I think it's just in everything. Like people, it also ties back to colonialism in a way, like good black, 100%. Bad black, you know, house slave, like those kind of connotations, because it's like people want to show that they've had the come up. They want to show that they're doing well. They want to show they live in places that are not, you know, poverty ridden, or so it ends up being in everything you make, the choices of schools you send your kids to, because you have the assumption that they'll be learning things of a certain standard, they'll be doing more sports, for example, even that can be also a privilege to do all these different sports, cultural So it literally is, as you said, the North versus South, the South, Samora Machel dividing Harare into two. And obviously we are both Harare girls, but it doesn't mean that we don't speak for the whole of Zimbabwe, but it does happen in the whole of Zimbabwe. So Bulawayo would have its own thing, and like everywhere has its own, this is the rich part and this is the not so.
Yeah, for sure. Part. And it even goes into like, you know, like places you would digit as a teen. Like digit means like hang out, like you just be seen, where you want to be seen, who you want to be seen with, what kind of parties you go to, who's you want to be like, who's going to be at this party, where you go shopping, where like it's all those things you think about before doing type of thing. So it's really like, especially in social circles, it's such a it plays in a big part.
It's problematic because like even if you want to date a guy who's not from the right social circle, it's like, or right part of town, it's like, oh, why? Or how did you even know him? Or like it's just assumed, all these assumptions are made from both sides, that there's all these issues that are going to come with it. So it's literally tied down the middle so bad. I feel like it's even got worse because before, when Zim was good economically, we had more of a middle class. So people who were not necessarily elite, and they're not necessarily, they were just in the middle doing their thing. Even school, there were some schools that were kind of confusing. I'm just going to shout out some like Convent, Prince Edward. We were like, is that really like a group A school or not? Like it had a mixture of people, you know? And then you get, so it was always like, and then now I feel like the disparities just become huge. Like it's just become really haves and have-nots. There's no middle ground. You either sleep with food in your tummy or you don't. Like it's just, it's so sad.
It's real. It's very real. And are there any perks to it though, to classism?
I think it would be very wrong of us to say there are none, because I do think people, and I think that's why, tying it back to people in Australia asking me now which schools I went to, I think they then give you a certain amount of undue respect they can criticize you, but there's like a bit of a, okay, you know, so it's like, yeah, it's almost like, okay, you got money, you know, so, and then because of that gives you, and they don't even know how you went to the school. You could have been on a bursary for all they know.
Or your
you could have
dad's job could have been paid for it
exactly.
somehow.
Like a lot of people had as perks of being, you know, CEOs or whatever of the companies. School fees can be paid. Or you could have like a cousin or an aunt who's overseas, and for them paying for school is not too expensive. They don't know, right? But then because it goes without saying that it's a good school, it's just always like you get this sense of like a bit of a okay, you went there kind of thing. You're cultured, all these assumptions are made for you. So even when it comes to networking, it's especially when you want to network with other white people in Zimbabwe for business reasons or whatever, they just think, you're kind of like one of us, quote unquote. You know, whereas if you mention the school like, I went to Glenora or Glenview, they won't have that same amount of respect, quote unquote, for you. What do you think?
Totally. And I think you see it play out even outside of Zim. It's like the shift in, you know, conversation, as you said, or how people see you or esteem you. And it's like assume that, you know, it's like you're successful. But for me personally, I met people who were successful professionals, like in industries that, you know, are really well paying, where they're doing really well for themselves. And I'm in a field that's not. And I'll be like, wow, like how would that even stack up in the world standard? Like you're doing like much better than I am. But there's a complex that is then built around, and a complex on one end of feeling, you know, maybe a little inferior or insecure because it's been so ingrained since you were young. And then on the other hand, a complex of guilt. And, you know, I mean, some people milk the whole idea of classism and want you to feel it, you know.
They want you to know there's a difference.
Yes, between you and I, and then throw in elitism, and it's like even worse. But I think for me, I've dealt with that the guilt of it too. But you still also want to appreciate the life you grew up with and what your parents did.
And the story behind it, exactly, what your parents did.
Our parents, I think similarly, you know, weren't born into, you know, the life that they were able to afford, my siblings and I. So it's like, you need to appreciate that and call it out for what it is. So it's like this weird dance.
It's a weird space to occupy.
It's a very weird space. And definitely there's privilege associated, you know. Even I look at myself and the work I'm doing, teaching English here, it's like I'm judged by how I speak. And it's like, wow, you must be. And I'm like, I'm afforded this opportunity to teach English here because I can speak a certain way, which is tied to the school I went to, which is then tied to class privilege and so on and so forth.
It's so funny you brought up education, because I feel like that's also a perk, you know, having choice.
Yes.
You know, I feel like if you're not, a lot of people will be like, if you don't succeed, you know, if you don't become a doctor, a lawyer, you're dead in the water, you know. Whereas I feel like kids who are from more, you know, upper class, so to speak, can have more choice. You know, you see variety in the careers they want to do. I mean, even you and I, we did art for like O level. People would be like, why did you waste a subject? Like, you know, so it's like, just even the stuff we were afforded to do, doing music, piano lessons, all those kind of things. It's perks. Those are the perks.
For sure.
Because some people don't even get the opportunity, like, let alone find out if they're good or not at it. They don't even get the foot in the door.
And I think that there's so many like drawbacks to that, is that we can't come together as a people. There's this divide innately as a people, and separation, and kind of, you know, sizing each other up, and, you know, it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, and assumptions made. Like sometimes people think you can't even speak. Like for me, a lot of times people be like, so you don't speak Shauna well. And I'm like, no, I speak Shauna really well. Just because I went to a group A school doesn't mean you know, oh, you can't cook sadza, oh, you don't like this. Like, there's a lot of things people say upon me.
Yes.
I don't even have a chance to like rebuttal or anything.
Yes.
No, you're just like, okay, okay.
And it's
that's
also,
what you think.
it's definitely, you see, a product of colonialism, because, you know, the further away from our African Zimbabweanness, the more, you know, sort of approachable we seem to the white, you know, and it's like,
exactly,
you know, and there's so many things. And I think one of the drawbacks for coming from a place of privilege is that we didn't, as a result, get to learn Zimbabwean history at school.
Yeah.
We lost a lot of like learning of cultural elements. You know, we had the discussion about hair, like hairstyles were restricted as a result. Like you could, so it's like the drawbacks of working or of the classism is on one end too. It's like you're denied your identity as well. And I don't think we really talk about it so much. And
no, we don't.
Know, it's one of those things that now it's your parents' job to make sure you maintain that. But part of education is that within your education, your identity is also kind of solidified and upheld.
Exactly.
So.
And I think like even for us, it was even deeper because those things were found to be shameful.
Yes.
Like, good on you, Peter House. You did have a Shauna Club. Shout out to my friend Tiso.
Yes.
But, like,
I remember that.
Oh, people would be like, oh, hell no. Am I gonna be dancing to some traditional music? And like, we found it to be so shameful.
Yeah.
And right now, I'm like, it's almost like a place of regret where it's like, why not? Why not stand in your culture? Why not? So that's the part that's like too polarizing for me, because it's like, okay, so you adapt to this, but then at the cost of you.
Yes.
At the cost of
you're ostracized as well.
Exactly. And then the white people don't really think you're white either. So it's like, who are you doing this for? And then that's when we end up internalizing the hate and pushing on each other. Because then it's like, okay, well, at least I'm better than you. That's like not true, which is not true at all.
And it's funny you talk about that, the polarization, because then when we were in Form 3, B block, we had to continue with Shauna as a language, where most of us thought we were going to drop it after Form 2. And I remember at O level, like being laughed at, because I remember I got a B for Shauna language at O level. And people being like, oh my goodness, from you got B, like laughing that I did well. In Shauna.
Yeah.
And now you look back, and I remember like people laughing at me, and I'm just like, I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah.
But, I
had a similar experience, because even I remember our first class with my friend Chiso in Shauna, and she was like, oh, okay, so all of you did Zimsec grade 7 results. She's like, what did you get? And like, I think it was like you had to get like 4 units, or like 1 unit.
1 unit
like
per subject.
The highest. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, I did get a 1. I got 4 units. Got a 1 in the primary school I went to. They did teach you Shauna properly. And like people like, and I remember she was like, for a second, I think for like 2 or 3 weeks, I was like her best bud in the class. She thought, this kid knows her, you know, like at the same time, I was also like, well, delving deeper into that, was also because of my background, because I knew coming from my family background, of course I could like balance both. I had to find a way to balance both. You know, I couldn't go every holiday and not speak to my grandma properly. You know, then in the same token, we had some people in our class who couldn't say their names properly. Like, you know, the actual Shauna names pronounced with all the R's or the nuances of Shauna, because obviously, and that's not their fault, but it just speaks on background. This is how deep embedded it is. Some people can't even say their names properly.
Yeah, it's deep.
So, it's deep.
But then how did that shift? Because now we're talking from we took a step back, right? We're out of the Zim context. Like, how did you adjust, and what did it make you realize by leaving Zim? How did that, you know, kind of open you up to like, oh, this could be problematic, or
very problematic,
you know? And is it still prominent even within the diaspora?
For me, I feel like I think I said this in one of our last episodes when I was like, a family episode, when I said when I go back home, I put a Zimbabwean hat on. And I think for me, I didn't have to adjust. When I came to Australia, I kind of knew quickly that everyone's on the same level. There's no, who are you showing off for? Yeah, we got Nike too. Like, yeah, Beyonce dropped Ivy Park. We all go to the store. Nobody, everybody can afford. Like, what are you talking about? If you lose your wallet, you will find it with money still inside. Like, there's no, because of people being comfortable in terms of materialistically, financially, it takes away a lot of those icky layers that classism can bring. Because, choice of schools is here. Of course, there's private schools. But majority of people, the middle class is healthy. So, like, I feel like it's like where Zimbabwe, and as I was saying before, the middle class kind of disappeared because of the economy, falling to nothing. It's almost like Australia is the opposite thing, where the middle class is healthy. So it really is a very small percent that are super rich and a very small percent that are super poor, and everyone's in the middle. So some stuff you can't afford, some stuff you can afford. You just go with what you... So I never really had to adjust. I kind of felt like it was a welcome relief. Like, and I have to think about this. I mean, there was a big shift from when you leave being a student to when you start working.
Yes, of
course.
I
think that shift happens with everyone. Even Aussies would say, oh yeah, when I was a student, I was eating $2 noodles, normal.
Yes.
So I don't think, but when I go to Zim, especially now being diaspora, the assumption again is that we got money. Somehow we get $1 million on the plane when we leave. They hand you your boarding pass and $1 million.
Yeah, $1 million.
So when I go home, it's all about popping bottles. Let's be seen. Like, it's just so crazy. It's so crazy.
Oh gosh, I remember. It's so funny too. It's like, I think because of the state of the Zimbabwean economy, classism and elitism have to play so that you can move in Zim. Like, you need those connects, you need that money in order to get by or get to a certain level in Zim, right?
I agree.
And the thing is, when you leave Zim and then you come back, because then I had left Zim, I left Zim and I lived outside of Zim for a while, right? And then I'm like, go back and I'm like, what in the actual is happening here? And I remember like that pop bottle lifestyle that like, and I remember there was a Christmas where a couple of people I knew were around from out of the country, and like we went out together, and they were like asking, they're like, what is it with this Zim lifestyle, be seeing pop bottles, but like the economy is suffering? And these are people who are out of the country making a great living for themselves, but they also couldn't rationalize this lifestyle thing, right? Yep. But I think it's kind of this necessary thing to show that I'm not one of you. I'm not suffering. I'm not like the
VIP section, boo.
Yes, like
behind the velvet rope, boo.
So it's really interesting that the economy is on its knees, but there's this need to prove that I'm not at your level type of thing. And I think that's one thing that I cannot marry. I cannot comprehend.
Yeah.
So,
like recently they had Valentine's Day, right? Or whatever in February. And there's this wedding planner who was selling flowers for $750 US. Like, to give listeners context, this is way more than someone's monthly salary, way more than 6 months. In fact, it could be a yearly salary for a lot of. So someone to be selling some Valentine's roses, not even the forever items, not even the ones that will
they weren't the one in the petroleum.
The fresh flowers in a big box, those nice hat boxes they're doing these days. And now it became a challenge for all the socialites and the influencers in Zimbabwe to buy, to scene tagging and buy, right? Kudos to the person doing this because, hey, business. But if you actually look deeper into it, you're like, wait, hang on. You can't afford to keep the lights on, but you want to buy these flowers to just show what? Like, it's just, and it's so bad because a lot of it is run on people getting money from overseas or whatever ways they're getting it. But it's like we've also lost the ability to have discernment and be like, okay, we don't have to spend money on this. Okay, really, this doesn't matter. This is not going to serve me in the future. So finances is like a whole thing we need to really go into in Zim, because I don't think people know how to treat or be with money. Like, it's just, if you have it, you spend it, because you never know about tomorrow. That's the attitude in Zim.
You know, like, I just
crazy.
had to, like, stuff like that really just affects me. Like, it really breaks me. I don't know why, but it's something that always, like, it hurts. And I'm just like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
And maybe someone can explain to us, like, the rationale of it all and make it make sense to me, but it really doesn't. And it breaks me because, like you're saying, some people don't even have jobs. Like, we have a 90% unemployment rate in Zim.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And that idea to be like, let me floss and show you. It's like, why? Like, why do we do that? Anyway. Whew,
do you ever find it sticky explaining to someone else? So I'll just give you an example. Like, if there's two Zimbabweans, and your accents are clearly different, because unfortunately classism also plays into that. Some people went to schools where they had American teachers, so they tend to have more of an American twang. Some the British, some speak the Zimbabwean accent. Do you ever find that hard to explain, like why you speak differently?
Yes, I do.
Because I find that hard to explain to, like, my husband. He's like, they're Zimbabwean, but they, like, I wouldn't have picked it up from the accents. It's really different. Or even when he went home for Rora and is meeting all my family with all our different accents, it's an adjustment, and it's hard to, like, explain without offense.
Yes, there's no real easy way to explain it. It's just the way it is. Like, the way my mom speaks is different to how I speak. And like, just in that, it's like, it's hard. But anyway, we could go on. This is a touchy subject. But before we go into, before we say goodbye, who is our shout out for this week? Amanda, could you let us know?
Oh, I love this one. This one's a goodie. This one was a surprise from Rumbi, but I love it. You should check him out or check her out. We actually don't really know
if it's a he or her.
He or she. So check them out on Instagram. Kajare made it. They do a lot of graphic design. Like, just what I got from Rumbi was coasters, because I got this crazy fetish thing about Black is King.
Yes.
And Ruby came through for my birthday and got me these beautiful coasters using some of the iconic looks Beyonce had. But yeah, Rimby, what more? You know more. So
no, I think for me, I stumbled through someone I follow on Instagram, and he uses satire in his illustrations to talk about, like, pertinent issues or pop culture issues, but also makes some really beautifully designed illustrations, pop culture often, and other, and you can buy different products. It's like coasters I got from Amanda. You can get, like, I think they even have chopping boards, cushions. They recently released, I think, a candle line that they said they've been working on for a while. Just a variety of products, good price points. They ship from the UK, I think. And it was decent shipping time from UK to you, I think. I don't think,
it was definitely. And definitely worth a checkout. Like, when you're always thinking what to get someone who you think has everything, or you know, it's just good to share some humor.
Yeah, for sure. So
beautiful to see.
Definitely our Zim shout out. It's at Kajare Made It on Instagram. We'll link it in the episode. As always, thank you so much for listening in. Please feel free to drop us your thoughts and comments. You can subscribe on our YouTube, on our podcast platforms, wherever you get your podcasts. And please also feel free to rate and review us on the podcast platforms as well.
Yes, please do.
Yeah. But it's been great. Thank you so much. And we will catch you for the next episode. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys. Bye, Ruby.
Bye.